So we'll move on further down here to a different area. So one of the things that was very interesting is that this entire process wasn't driven by any one department within the institution. It's been an incredibly long but delightful collaborative process with education staff, design staff, exhibition staff, and technology, with this basic premise that early on, probably starting I guess about 2.5 years ago, we went back and said, what are the original ideas that were in the galleries, and really tried to distill that down to the bare essence of what it was. And one of the benefits is that Aubrey and I both have experience in a lot of unusual technology and how to use that. And so we were able to take these very raw ideas and throw away any preconceived idea of how to do it and just kind of come up with something from scratch. Over here, we have this idea of what's a typical pocket theater, and we wanted to try to find a different way to interact with it, something that allowed us to experiment with interface. And so I'm going to turn it over to Aubrey for a moment to talk about this.
What we have here is what we refer to as the artist studio table. This table is has various questions that are on each of the on various topics from 5 different artists. There's 5 questions, 5 artists. It allows the visitor to learn more about the process of making art, and especially art that's here at the Denver Art Museum. The technology component here is that there are magnetic sensors underneath the table that are sensing a magnet that's inside of a selector, and as you move the selector, a video plays, allowing you to see and hear the artists talk about their work. As we move the selector, it very rapidly switches between the various videos.
This is one of our experiments in using tangible object interfaces, things that already have a real-life counterpart. So people aren't necessarily spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to use an interface. What are these buttons on a screen that I need to use? What am I doing? But rather, we take a very simple metaphor. In this case, X marks the spot, and somebody coming right up to the table instantly can use the experience and just put on the thing that they're interested in. The other part that's really compelling about this is that the series of artist interviews that we've done, we've tried to develop it in a format that we can make it an ongoing program. So as individual art objects change in the Western Gallery, we can interview additional artists and make it part of a broader experience that over time in aggregate builds up an incredible library of information that's very, very intimate, very personal with the different artists, and gives them a very discreet peek into the insides of their lives. They very much in these instances, instead of making it seem like art making is a magical process that they go into a closet for a month, come out with this fabulous piece of art. They talk about what a daily grind it is, that some days are full of success, some that are not. And so really, when we look at this kind of experience, the idea is to let people get to the content as quickly as possible and not have to concentrate on how to use the interface. It just simply works as it should. We've always claimed that everything that we work on here in the museum is going to go through an iterative process. We recognize we're not going to get stuff right the first time, and maybe not the second time, maybe not the third time, but eventually we plan on getting it right. This table is a good example of this. It's now February. The museum opened in October. When we originally this is the second version of this table. The first version that we did used RFID sensors throughout the table and had an RFID chip as part of the selector. And one of the things that we learned early on was when there's 25 sensors that were embedded in this table, that there were some interference problems, that they had to cycle through individually, that when you did this one here, maybe up to 2 seconds before it sensed that it had been there twice, so you weren't picking up random transient sensor reads. And then also, it was just a little bit pokey. So you had this very almost awkward experience if you put the X somewhere and almost an uncomfortably long pause before the video actually changed. And so one of the things we did is went back and looked at the very raw sensing technology that was used in the first place and tried to figure out how we could do it better. And so we realized that having 25 sensors that could simultaneously read, testing out a few different things, and finally settling on the magnetic sensors we use has created an experience that's worked out incredibly well. It was interesting because this is a case that when we first designed it, one of the things that we really worried about was that as people move the X around, that it would be confusing, that as they accidentally saw a video appear because the X was moving, that when it was a slower RFID technology, we thought it would be confusing. Here, the response is so immediate and so fast with the magnetic sensors that there's no confusion at all. People instantly get that it works, and there's no problem with it. So it's been actually a really good example of being able to go back, make something better than it was originally. And almost everything that we do in the museum, these are all experiments to us. We want to keep iterating on stuff. Things will improve, things will change. And